So yeah, I've actually been doing a lot of research past few weeks on the Wildermann, in the village Wildermann in the Harz, which is not far away from me, and I've come across two different stories, and whether it's the same story that's been spanned differently over the years. One's a little bit more sad and brutal, the other one's a little bit more kind of for kids. I don't know whether it's talking about two different times, which it possibly is, because the stories are very different, but they've got quite a lot of similarities. So I thought I'd just tell you them quickly, what I've come across. So I've covered this story before in a couple of podcasts. One with the great Duke Sullivan, World Bigfoot Central, and another with great Michigan Rob from Bunch of Bigfoot. Check them out, by the way, guys. They're great people and great stories, great research, great interviews. Duke's actually who got me into this, doing the podcasts, and he got me in touch with Rob. Next Friday, I should have this Friday coming, I should have another podcast with Daniel from Cryptid World Network. I think it's the Cryptid World Network. Yeah, so to the stories really. So Wildermann was really founded in 1529. 1529. Previously to that, it had been a small mining area with settlement, but they'd all died from the plague. So it's completely abandoned. There'd been nobody there. It had been just a couple of caves, possibly mines. And then in 1529, the dukes of the Bundesland had sent their men to go back into the Harz. At this point it had been extremely wild, and they were sent back to find this silver ore that had been mined now in the 1200s. These guys are going down the Innerst Valley, it's the Innerst riverbed there, and they're kind of blown away because they suddenly come across these really huge footprints along the riverbed, and they're kind of shocked because they know that they're on their own. They know they're miles away from any civilization or any villages or towns, and so they're curious, and they decide to follow these prints, which leads them back up into the forest. Now when they get into the forest, they see a humongous man. He's covered in hair. He's gigantic proportions, and they also see with him a woman who's also covered in hair. They're naked. Now the stories here, I've found a couple of different versions of this story. Some say the female was carrying a boar on her shoulders. Some say the male was carrying a bear on his shoulders, and that the woman was dragging this boar behind. Some don't mention that he's carrying a bear, but he is carrying a huge fir tree club in his hand. So they give friendly calls to these beings, try and get them to come closer. but they both run off. They both won't answer. Over the next days and weeks, they see this pair quite often. So they decide that they're going to go and try and capture him. And they manage to find them, and they shoot arrows at them from a bow and flintlocks. They manage to shoot the male in the foot. But that's when it all goes to hell, because then they have a massive fight on their hands. And this wild man's fighting them, swinging his club. Eventually, overcome by his wounds, they manage to capture him. But the female, she's also almost captured, but kicking and punching and biting, she manages to escape, and she's never seen again into the forest. Now, they capture the male, and they chain him up, and they try to talk to him, and he won't talk. He just keeps staring back up to where they found him was near a cave. And they don't know what to do with him, because he won't talk. So they decide they're going to take him back to the dukes. There's a few different dukes, I can't remember their names. But on the way, he dies. Now, because they were sad he died and they didn't really want to kill him, they just wanted to capture him, they named the town Wildermann. And the cave where they'd lived, when they went in there, they'd seen that these beings had been only eating different berries and vegetation and raw meat. So they discovered in this cave a huge silver ore deposit. So that was the first mine of Wildermann. Now apparently the Rathaus stands on this site, the Rathaus, or a town hall. And outside a great linden tree grows, and the story is that in his rage of being captured, he pushed a linden tree branch into the ground, and so sprang this linden tree that's there to this day. Whether that's true, it's probably more myth. So that, that's in the 1500s. Now, the second story is also about Wildermann, but I believe this is either older or it's complete myth. So in the area of Wildermann, and it gives no mention to the town at this point or mines being there, but there is a knight, and he's called Knight Klaus. He's on his own, he's going through the forest, and he comes across huge footprints. He follows the footprints back to a cave. As he arrives at this cave, this big, gigantic female figure of a woman who's naked sees him and flees. She flees into the forest, and she's never seen again. Now, Klaus, he approaches the cave, and in the cave is a wild man. And the female, she's left the wild man, and she's also left a baby. And this baby is wrapped up in moss, fern branches, and fern leaves, like. Now, whatever happens to this baby, nothing ever is told again in the story, so it's probably that it probably passed away. Now, Klaus, he'd managed to talk with the wild man, the wild man couldn't talk, but they managed to communicate. And it said in this cave that they'd found also again silver ore. So the wild man, for some reason, was willing to work with Night Clouds to mine and work in the mines. And eventually he would meet another woman and he'd have many children. And it said that the descendants of Wildermann all share the same bloodline as this giant wild man. Now, this is where my theories come in, because there's no mention in this story of dates, time, era. Being at night, you're looking at probably more the 1300s. There's no discussion of there being a settlement there beforehand. So, you know, to me, I don't know about the second version. It seems a bit more of a tamed, you know, oh, this great night he walked through the forest, oh, he found this, oh, he managed to get him to do this. It seems a bit mythological to me, that one. Who knows? If it was in the 1300s, it could have been the first settlement, where eventually they all died from the plague. There was still Wildermann living there in this area after the people had died out. And then in the 1500s, the miners come back and they discover that there's still a couple of Wildermann living there. So the first story has no mention of a baby, the second story does. So, you know, interesting stories really. And quite different, but with similarities. So yeah, that was just a quick sum up of my research over the past couple of weeks on the town of Wildermann. Wildermann's not far away from me. I actually live in the city where the Grimm brothers used to live. And, obviously you know about the Grimm brothers, which I do have a great story about, not from the Grimm brothers, but about a werewolf that lived in Germany. It's quite a famous story. This is at the time of the Napoleonic Wars, and I will mention the Grimm brothers in it because it's the time of them, you know, of them doing their stories. They'd have been just about in their 20s. But I'll save that for another time. That'll be the next story about about this werewolf. And it's a very brutal story actually. It's very grim, but very famous. So yeah, that's that. I'm gonna now head off up into the forest there, see what I can find. I've done my little talk a little bit earlier. This is, you know, I'm doing it now before I head off. So I'd just like to say, please, thanks for joining. Please like and subscribe. And have a great time, everybody. And hopefully I'm going to go and find some signs of the wild man right now.